So if you would want people to remember one thing or one key idea from your book, what would that be?
That if they want to understand Ladino in the 21st century, they only need to read one book, Ladino on the Internet, Sepharad 4.
So today I'm going to be speaking to Professor Carlos Yepra Lopez about his upcoming book, Ladino on the Internet. So, would you like to tell us what the book is about and why you wrote it?
Sure, there has been a lot written about Ladino, but not so much Ladino in the 21st century, let alone as mediated by the Internet. So there's a gap whereby the scholarly literature has treated the Internet as an appendix or a footnote, if you will, to the history of the development of Ladino. And this book corrects that flaw and says, listen, not only is the Internet not just a footnote to the offline development of Ladino, but it's actually the place where most of the interaction in Ladino is nowadays taking place. Consequently, Ladino on the Internet, Sepharad 4, is the first critical and systematic study of the online revitalization of Ladino.
Right, okay, so what is Sepharad 4? Can you explain that, please?
Yes, so Sepharad 4 is taken from Max Weinreich's separation of the Sephardic diaspora into Sepharad 1, 2, and 3. He himself drew upon the divisions of Ashkenaz and their connection to Yiddish to do this. So he said, okay, in Sepharad 1, Jews were in the Iberian Peninsula. This is prior to the expulsion. Then in Sepharad 2, we see the development of Ladino as a diasporic vernacular, co-territorial one in the eastern basin of the Mediterranean Sea between 1492 and the mid-20th century. And then in Sepharad 3, which begins around the 1950s, we see the global development of Ladino as a post-co-territorial diasporic vernacular, meaning people who speak Ladino no longer necessarily inhabit the same area or country. Sepharad 4 is a new stage of the Sephardic diaspora, not about the language per se, but it has consequences for the language. So when it comes to Ladino in particular, within Sepharad 4, because of the Internet, we see a development of Ladino as a cyber vernacular and a cyber post-vernacular. And we also see a cyber coinization, meaning there are different influences that come to Ladino, which were not possible before. But now there is a post-co-territorial variety on the Internet, for instance, English is much more present in Ladino than it was before, when Ladino speakers had to be living in the same territory with English speakers for English to influence Ladino, right? So the fact that the community is now connecting on the Internet means a new stage for the language itself. And that's Sepharad 4.
So why the Internet?
Yes, and the Internet is not just a new package for an old reality, but the Internet itself is changing actively the way the language is spoken and written. Yes, so it has agency. It's not just a repository.
Okay, and so what methodological framework did you use when approaching this book and your research?
My main inspiration is Gilad Zuckerman's Revivalistics. This book was published in 2020 and is a transdisciplinary field of inquiry. And it specializes in the preservation of endangered languages based on 3 categories: reclamation, revitalization, and reinvigoration. The reclamation is the bringing back into life a language that had supposedly died, like Hebrew, for instance, right? Reinvigoration is about the revitalization of a language with a strong intergenerational transmission, like Yiddish. And revitalization is the same, but applied to a language that is more endangered in the sense that it has less intergenerational transmission, i.e. Ladino. So that's why this book is about the revitalization as opposed to reclamation, because Ladino hadn't died before, or the reinvigoration because Ladino no longer has a strong intergenerational transmission. That's why it's about the revitalization of Ladino. And then this is the main framework, right? Sorry. But then I add or I supplement that main framework with critical sociolinguistics. And from the combination of both, we have the framework of the book.
Right. Okay. So you talk about the internet being, the main platform for Ladino right now. What are the main online platforms that you focus on in your book?
What I do in my book is I distinguish between three main periods of the internet: Web 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. So far, the scholarly literature has focused on Web 1.0, a little bit on platforms such as Facebook groups or YouTube channels from Web 2.0, but sporadically, and nothing about Web 3.0. And what I do in the book is I map out the whole development of the internet and what that means for the evolution of Ladino. And so in particular, I would say that the most original areas are Web 2.0, which hadn't been systematized yet. Only specific platforms had been analyzed here and there. And then the Web 3.0. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. And I want to touch upon that again a bit later because I've got another couple of questions to ask you.
Sure, absolutely.
So this question is particularly interesting to me because, as you know, I am a student at UCL in the Jewish Studies department. And so I have some perceptions of the role that Yiddish plays in the department as a student, whether they're right or wrong. Okay, but you did the fellowship, the UK Research and Innovation Fellowship at UCL, and obviously your primary focus is Ladino. But what was your perception of Yiddish within the department compared to Ladino?
Right. So this is a very interesting question because the book is also to some extent comparative. Yeah, it is mostly about Ladino, but it also benefits from a comparison to Yiddish, which in turn is due to the fact that I experienced Yiddish in the UCL Jewish department, right? So I think that Yiddish is crucial when it comes to seeing one step ahead what can be done for the purpose of revitalizing Ladino, in the sense that there are online initiatives apropos Yiddish that could be used apropos Ladino. For instance, the master apprentice dynamic or the dubbing up subtitling of Netflix series, which is the case in productions like Unorthodox or Chisel, but it's not the case in Ladino speaking series. So it's a good mirror on which to look at ourselves for the purpose of revitalizing Ladino. At the same time, there are specific areas much more particular where Ladino is perhaps more developed than Yiddish online, but at any rate, this comparative dynamic is very enriching for the analysis.
Okay, so with all of this in mind, who did you write this book for?
I wrote it for people like you, for people who are intelligent, interested in Ladino, with an academic background, and now want to take that knowledge to the next level. And the good news is that it's open access, so everybody can read it for free in its entirety thanks to UKRI.
That's fantastic. But you can buy a physical copy if you do so wish, which I do.
Unless, say, you want to review the book, in which case you can contact me and then I can send you a free copy for review purposes, which then you can get to keep. So that will be the way of circumventing the paying for the physical copy. But otherwise, then yes, people will have to pay for the physical copy if they so wish. But they already have a digital one for free.
Great. Well, thank you.